Welcome, everybody. This is John Paul Mendoza, Speed Selling, and this is a Raging Verbalist number 221. Glad that you're here. If you're a newcomer, welcome. If you're a old hand veteran, you've been here before, that's great. Always hit the like and the subscribe. If you want to get annoyed, hit the notification bell kind of thing. We are on YouTube and Facebook, and in Facebook, we're at the Position to Win book group, Position to Win book group. Don't really talk much about politics, talk about a lot of other things that are on my mind. But of course, the person to ply me with the questions, ask me the tough ones, is the ever lovely Sandra. Sandra, welcome.
Hello, how are you doing today?
Excited, fighting the big ball in the sky. The sun is driving my office nuts, but we're going to make it. So
glad you're going to make it.
hanging in there. All right. So what are we talking about today? What are we talking about?
All right. So it's AI and voice recognition. So given that you are the Raging Verbalist, how long have you been waiting for voice recognition?
Well, it's been a long time. My brother Michael worked for this semiconductor company called Motorola, and I always thought it was cool, right? Because they used to show science fiction. You know, people are having this conversation and talking, and the computer understood, and then it could write all this stuff out and always look great. Fiction. Well, my brother calls me on the phone and says, "Hey, just had the preview of the new Motorola 68030, and it's fast enough. It's a 32-bit processor, which was a big deal, you know, a full 32-bit. And it's designed to handle heavy-duty tasks like doing voice recognition. So never fear, John, it is coming. It's going to be there. Just a little bit more time, and it's going to be there." Well, that was 1987. So that really kicked off my interest in doing that. And in fact, kicked me off to go out and buy an Apple Macintosh, which had a 68030, because, of course, yippee, we're going to get the voice recognition. So that's how long I've been waiting.
All right. And what was your first encounter with voice recognition?
Well, what I found is this package called, and at the time, I think it was called Dragon Naturally Speaking. Like, it was like Rev 1. And I went, man, this is so cool. Now, they had previous versions for specialty areas, but this one was designed for the general public. And I still remember that it said you could talk twice as fast as you could type. Well, if they knew how slow I typed, it wasn't much of a jump as far as I was concerned. I mean, really? It's going to be that slow? And I went, man, this is great. It was expensive, though. It was like $500 for that very first one. But yeah, I did it. You know, here's my credit card. Send it on down. I am ready to go. And of course, they talked about how easy it was going to be and how much. Oh yeah. So yeah, that was the first one I bought, and $5. Yeah, serious money.
So how well did it work?
Well, that was the sad part. The coolest part was reading the box, because on the outside of the box, it told me all the wonderful things it was going to do for me. And you know, I was going to have fresher breath and, you know, clearer thinking and, you know, all of that stuff, you know, and, you know, just going to have animal magnetism. And what it didn't tell me is that first you had to load this thing in, and it choked so much resource at the time. And we live in an age today where, you know, you just keep loading up stuff until the computer goes, and then you just got to back off and it keeps going. But it would crash the computer. And what it told me is that a really essential thing that you had to do was you had to do this training. And this training is that you had to read these, you know, paragraphs and then, you know, stories to it, and it would recognize this because this was part of the model. You know, like, you know, the brown fox ran across the prairie and jumped over the fence, and it just all of this stuff. And I trained it for like several hours and really worked hard at it and all that. Now, the problem is even after all of those hours, and I'm talking 4, 5, 7 hours, maybe more, all combined, is that first off, we weren't getting anywhere near the accuracy that they talked about. And then the speed, they said, well, naturally, as it learns, because it's naturally speaking, it's going to figure out and know you, and it's going to get better and better and better. Rev 1 did not get better. It was really freaking painful, and it didn't go where I wanted it to go. And it wasn't naturally speaking. It was, you had to speak very slowly and not have your words run. Just kept going. So yeah, that was that. The first one, yikes, bad news.
So the software didn't work.
It didn't work for me. Now, my lawyer at the time, Neil, and we'll leave his last name out, but Neil, and I were going to lunch one day, and I said, hey, I'm trying this thing, right? Because I was proselytizing. I could have been their evangelist, even though the damn thing didn't work. But I still loved all the stuff that the box told me it would do. And I told him about it, and he bought not only the version that I had, but he bought the lawyer version, which had a much more complete dictionary. Think about it. They were trying to jam all of this onto floppies that you loaded onto your tiny little hard drive. And he did all of that. But what he did is that he was so used to dictating and having a transcription service that he could actually dictate to a metronome and just have this, tick tock, tick tock. I'm probably saying it too fast. It's like tick tock. And it worked great for him. Right out of the chute, he learned it, he trained it. It was doing great stuff for him, which tells me that it wasn't necessarily the software. It may have been the user, but how many of us want to look and blame ourselves? I don't know about you, but how could it be my fault when the software doesn't work the way I think it should work? I mean, seriously, come on. Now, that's the same thing in business, because in business, oftentimes we make decisions that really end up hurting us, and we don't necessarily say it's a mistake that we made, but I can tell you it is, because I wrote the book. The book is, most businesses fail in the first 5 minutes. It just takes them 3 to 5 years to realize it. 3 to 5 years to realize it. Position to win. You will make mistakes in the first 300 seconds that may doom you to failure. You won't if you get this book. And you get this book at positiontowinbook.com, positiontowinbook.com. You get a physical copy there, which I will autograph for you. Send me something snappy you want to say, or you can go buy it from Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million. You can also get it digitally from Kindle, Nook, and the Apple iBooks. And by the way, it is a great spring read. Let's just put it that way, because you just got the spring. Also, remote work for a better world. If you work remotely, this will give you lots of tips and tricks and all of those things that you should be doing to make that work better than ever. And of course, who couldn't use a Raging Verbalist mug? I use it on a regular basis when I want to rage and have my favorite hot or cold beverage, and away you go. So there you go. All right, Sandra, what is our next step? What are we going after?
All right, so that sounds pretty discouraging. So did you give up?
Well, here was the interesting part. Once you were in the Dragon Naturally Speaking funnel, every time they came up with a new offer, they would send you a nice, really well done direct response brochure, and then they would call you on the phone and they'd say, hey, how is it working for you? Which I would think was, I guess that was an okay thing. But then they would tell you that, well, the new revision has better accuracy, more accurate speed, better accuracy, faster speeds, more capability, and all of that. And then they would give you a discount, like 50% off. So then instead of it being $500, it was $250. And I got on that train. I mean, there's a 12-step program I ended up having to take, but I did that several times. I think 5 times I did this. And each time it was, once again, this is going to work. It's going to really come through. It's going to make it take place. And I'll tell everybody why that I do this. See, if you sit there and say, well, but you just learned how to type. Well, I learned how to type, and I'm not a great typist. Well, you learn English here. What are we talking about? So I'm a verbalist, not a. Anyway, but here's the rub, is that if you're going to be typing, it helps if you can actually spell the words. And if you can't spell the words and you just kind of fake it, which is what happens to somebody who can't spell. I can't spell. Of course, there's a saying that I got from a very high level VP of sales of a massive company, and he said, John, my rule is if they can spell, they can't sell. Oh, yeah, I fit that one because yeah. So that's why I wanted to be able to talk. I talk because I know the words. I can say them. I just don't necessarily know how to spell them. So yeah, I worked at it, and yeah, but ended up buying 5 copies of this thing. Yikes!
So why did you keep trying this? Isn't insanity doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result?
Well, there is a lot of insanity in this. And the reason why I kept doing it is that I wanted to write more. I was already to the point where I was recording myself and talking about this and doing things. And in fact, I actually took a transcription service as a client, as a coaching client, to help her build her business. And we traded out coaching sessions for transcription. Transcription could get really expensive. And the other thing is that if you talk as fast as I do at times and say the things that I say, transcriptionists will just kind of, they just put, hey, I couldn't understand it, or blah, 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 or something like that. So that was really the motivation and driver, is that I kept needing to do this. And yes, it is insanity to keep trying, but everybody wants to believe that this software, whatever that is that you need, is going to work maybe someday. And so that's what's got us today. So I kept trying, and, and then I found that I could get transcription online for less, which, by the way, everybody has raised their prices. It used to be cheaper. And away we go with that. And we did find a solution eventually called Otter, but we'll talk about them in just a minute.
So given your tenacious attitude, what else did you try?
I started calling the people at Dragon saying, and they changed, they got bought out by, I think, Nuance or something, whatever it was. And I kept calling these people up saying, hey, this doesn't work. This isn't doing what I want to do. Well, you have to train it more. And then they said, well, can you take documents that you've written, assuming that I was a typer and I knew how to do that? And I said, well, here's the problem. The way I speak, and if something is typed out, there's a disconnect. There's a differentiation between the two. And that difference will mean that this won't work as well. So they suggested, well, we have these consultants, and maybe a consultant could help you. Now, I don't remember her exact name, but we'll call her Marilyn, and she was a very nice person. And I hired and paid her to be a coach to teach me, because I wasn't going to give up. Damn it. I wasn't going to let it go. I was going to find a way to get it done. And she goes, well, listen, send me some of your audio that you have, but send me, and of course she wanted all the stuff I had typed. And I'm like, well, that would fit in a, very small file set. So I sent her all this audio, paid her money. She listened to this, and she calls me on the phone. We have a coaching section, and she goes, well, the first thing I want to tell you is that, John, you have a very weird word juxtaposition. Now that all that means is that the word that I say and then the next word is different than what most of the people say. Now this ties back into AI, by the way. We're going to hit that. So I went, well, okay. And she goes, well, and if you could learn how to undo that. I said, well, you don't understand. When I go out and I speak, one of the things that people find clever, unique, and laugh or cry or whatever, or get angry or get excited, it's the way I put the words together. If I modified how I speak to make sure that the computer, that the software package can make its way through this, then I lose my uniqueness. Now, come on, that's not what I want to do. So that didn't work at all. So I bid farewell to fair Maryland and said, well, the naturally speaking, which, by the way, by the end, they said had 98% accuracy at 160 words per minute. And all I could say is one word. By the way, they wouldn't put in some words, and the one word they wouldn't put in was the compound word, which was bullshit, because it never hit 160 words a minute, nor anywhere near 98% accuracy.
So have systems gotten better?
So what's happened is that, Apple introduced Siri, and I started using Siri, and that was interesting. And then there's Google Talk. I haven't really used the stuff from Microsoft. So those two are good for what I would consider short blasts. So if I say something and put something in place, they'll work for a short blast. But what happens is that if you do something long, like when I was writing the book, right? The book. Who can forget the book? Most businesses fail. I mean, there's a lot of words in this thing, lots of words. So I would have loved to have been able to speak and have it do its thing, but it really, really didn't get there, because the longer you spoke, the more kooky and quirky it would get. Now, everyone tells you, well, John, that's because Apple's behind the curve with Siri. You should try Google Speak. I guess it's called Google Speak. I don't know exactly what it's called. Whatever, Google Mumble, whatever the hell it is. But what I can tell you is that the more I would do a longer run at it, guess what? No, it wasn't tracking with me, and it wasn't getting better. And here's the biggest problem, is that when I talk into the phone, it doesn't necessarily record what I say. Now, you may say, but that's kind of weird. So, you know what you just said, except when you are a high verbal person, when you say it, you may not be able to absolutely recall exactly what you say. So then I needed to get like another recording device, because they didn't set it up. So it recorded your audio just in case you wanted to go back and listen to it. So better, but nowhere near where it should be.
So are there coping strategies?
And this is where we get to this weird service called Otter, Otter. And I don't know where they're at. I've tried to get a hold of them. Who knows where their mysterious servers lie. And Otter became my AI transcription service, and you pay a bulk price. Yes, I could send you a link if you want to, but we're not doing that. I mean, just go check them out. I mean, tell them the Raging Verbalist sent you. They probably won't send me anything, but it doesn't matter, because this actually works pretty well. I use it every single week. I use it multiple times a week when we do prep for these calls or Raging Verbalist sessions. Sandra and I get on the phone, we record it, it goes to Otter. Now I'm going to ask Sandra, because see, it's the person who's using the output that really matters. That's what matters. So Sandra, you get the output of Otter. So has it improved over the years that we've been working together? And what's your impression of where it's at right now?
I think it has gotten better. Before it had more word jumbles, I would say, or not quite hearing it correctly. But over time, it's just progressively gotten decent for sure. And sometimes I say immaculate, where there's like no mistakes, and why can't it do that all the time? And some days it's like, what the heck? It just doesn't get half of it, but it steadily does a very decent job, and I highly recommend that. And I remember a long time ago when I had an office job, and my boss would record into one of those tiny tape recorders, and you're like rewinding the tape. So this is much better than that. Highly recommend it for sure.
And one of the, of course, the kooky things is that it never gets Gabe, Gabe, 4 letters. It never seems to get Gabe's name correct. It's Babe or Gerb or
Gabe.
There you go.
Who knows?
Who knows about that? Yep.
So, are you optimistic that AI will help move this thing along?
Well, I guess now that I've been on this trek for so many years, I have to be optimistic or delusional or both. And AI, because of LLM. LLM, for those of you who don't know, is a large language model. That's what chat is. That's what all of the generative AIs that you talk to are. And what it does is it's attempting. In the beginning, it was designed and attempted to predict the next word. So if you said good, what's the next word after good? Is it goodbye? Is it good day? Is it goodbye? Good riddance? Is it, so what is that next word? And this started well over 100 years ago. And the guy who started was some Russian scientist dude, and he did it by hand, where he would take conversations and then try to figure out, well, what's the next word? How can we predict the next word? And then by predicting the next word, how would you predict the word after that and after that and after that and after that? So as the training goes on and as the processing goes on, and I understand it's a challenge to take human speech, and I'm speaking in English. There's how many hundreds of languages, thousands of derivations of languages. So, I guess where we are, we should be thankful. But are we going to get to where we need to go? Well, possibly with AI, because it's going to study all of these things. The downside of it is that in the beginning, I know this isn't like a biblical thing. In the beginning, there was, no. In the beginning, it's all written word, and written word and spoken word are very different. This is why when somebody asks me, John, do you believe that when salespeople should use a script? And I'm like, yes, as long as the script was written by somebody who understood that it is a performance. You have to speak it. You have to know how to do that. So I'm somewhat optimistic and hope that AI, because of all the effort, is going to move that along and figure out how to do this even better. And with that, I just want to thank everybody who has joined us for Raging Verbalist number 221. I'm John Paul Mendoza, Dr. Speed Selling, and for myself and the ever lovely Sandra, hopefully you have a great voice recognition day. Keep trying to train those models, because maybe someday in that near or distant future, we'll be able to speak and it'll be able to write and it'll actually be comprehensible.